Record. Welcome in. This is a restorative pathway session, and I call this the Awake pathway. And there's several variations of this that I have in my book. But what we're going to focus on today is a mini retreat that will help you warm up your respiratory muscles, center your hips and your spine. And we're going to use some props to hold our body in these therapeutic shapes. So what you'll need is a stack of blankets, a belt, and if you have a long belt, you might buckle it up so it's very thick, so you can make it into a loop, whether it's a cinch belt or it's a quick release. You would just connect it together so you have a thick belt behind you, just maybe on the very ledge of your blanket stack, a flat bolster. And I want you to also have a couple of yoga blocks, and if you possibly have a sandbag or a bag of 5 or 10 pound weight, you want to have that as well, because it helps us so much with grounding, traction. It gives us some weight bearing for our muscles, for our breathing muscles, strengthens our respiratory muscles, the diaphragm, and the intercostals. So let's start out. Let's do this mini retreat. We got our bolster with a block that's at its lowest setting directly in front of the bolster across the mat. And you're just going to lie back with your block under your tailbone and your bolster under your ribs. And I like to be near a wall because we are going to eventually use the wall for a full inversion. So I'm going to push myself back so I have my bolster supporting my ribs and my head on my blankets. And then I'll add my sand across the thigh-lids. Feel where the hip flexors get a little bit of a dent. In a good way, right? A little bit of pressure here is going to help elongate and kind of have a ripple effect in our respiratory muscles. It just pushes down at the base. It's going to pull your centerpiece long. And then reach open with the heart. Hold on to your belt. And as you slide the hands out wide on your belt, go ahead and come into this first pose. This is a horizontal chest opener, and it's part of the Awake pathway. So I hold my belt in a manner so that my arm-shoulder relationship is supported, and I can expand via the inhale across the ribs and relax my breath on the out breath, letting go. Right, from exhalation comes relaxation. So as you're breathing through the nose, focus on breathing through the nose, right? It brings the warm and moist air into the lungs. Moving through the nose and the sinuses, right, that filters the air and stimulates expanding the lung capacity. So it's really wonderful if you can focus on breathing through your nose and consider that motion of in-breath, immediately expanding in the ribs and then downwards into the lower abdomen, feeling it slightly dome at the base of the belly. And on the out breath, it rests back into the pool of the abdomen or abdomen. Inhale through the nose. Out breath, relax the breath how it's comfortable. Let go of the belt. Let the arms lower to the floor. And just feeling where the legs reach. So if your feet are touching the wall, That might be a nice base for your contact. Feeling the lower extremities. And we're going to purposely just shift the gravitational pull on our muscles and our organs. And so I want you to slide the sand actually across the ribs. Now it's not the upper ribs, right? It's across the rib central, right? The middle span of the rib cage. So when I bend the knees and walk the feet in, I reach across to my bolster ledge. And if you got a bolster with handles, it's extra helpful. But regardless, we're going to use this as a little bit of a workout. So if the sand on the ribs is way too much to incorporate into this transition, you can slide it off and add it again. Walk the feet back. You're on the balls of the feet, so the heels are up. And one more thing. Move one of your blankets over to the side. And you're going to lift the hips up and push the bolster just inches down to the back of your pelvis. Make sure the blanket's just under your head, not under your shoulders. And then bring the knees up, feet off the floor, slide back so that your sand, you can place it either on the shins, which is a lovely back stretch, or on the back of the legs, easier for the knees. So take a moment in upward facing forward bend, where the massage goes into the abdomen and the spine receives that flexion. Okay, so feel that pressure and massage into the core band. And there is clearly going to be some circulation experience, right, in the first pose with that expansiveness, and now that it flows across the band of the pelvi into the back. Okay, and I want you to just bring the feet to lift a little bit. If your sand is on the shins, let's just slide the sand off in general. And you're going to take a block, or if you happen to have like a massage ball, you can use that between the knees, but placing a narrow block width between the knees and let the arms span out and the legs flow side to side. Feel the waist extend. Any side bends are stretches for the abdominals and also the intercostals. So as I feel my knees lean side to side, what's really important here is to breathe slowly through the nose. It might be suddenly inspiring for your breathing muscles to do this crossover with the knees. And if you have a different item to put between them, like I said, a ball, if you have one of these therapy massage balls, having that between the knees is nice because it's a responsive surface. So as my knees go to the side, it just kind of squishes and helps give me that QL stretch. I like that reach into that side band just at the side of my lumbar. Okay, let's take a few more moments. Side to side movement. Legs stretch up. Right, just let that gravitational flow motion back towards the heart, the brain, reversing that pull on the muscles and the organs. The opposite of prolapse, just let the legs be lifting, reversing back to the brain. Might be calming, but also quite refreshing on your breathing muscles. As you send that bend back into the knees, I want you to take the ball or block out between the knees and let's simply roll to the left. You're on your bolster, so you're going to push the knees downwards and slide down off of the bolster. And if you have that block still tucked in behind you, I want you to put that overhead behind the blanket And then take the bolster that's across the mat and push it up next to your left thigh. And let's grab our blanket stack so we have a pretty stable lift for our brain to be supported on. A block overhead that's at the highest setting. And you have a possibility of using a block or this ball on the inside of the right thigh. We're going to come into grabbing our sandbag or a bag of rice, whatever you have that's a weight, and shift into side sage. And this really provides us with the benefit of feeling the movement chamber of our ribs. And it's such a nice blend from what we just came from with the knees going side to side. Now we can stabilize the shoulders, the chest, the shoulder chest. And as you stretch your right arm overhead, you're going to reach for that block. And I want you to touch onto the block and let that right hand rest onto it and feeling this nourishing sensation between the spine and the ribs, right? The thoracolumbar support. Truly rest the weight of your head into the blankets. Let your neck relax. Feel a perfect range of moving the inner environment with the breath. Really land in your bones. So the weight of the bones just centers on the earth, and the range of the breathing supports that optimal circulation to your heart, to your lungs, and soothes the nervous system. If you have weight on you, it could be on the ribs. It could also be down on the hip. It doesn't have to be across the ribs. Sometimes they fall off easily. So simply a bag of rice works too, which could be many different weights, but it's okay to use just about anything for that weight. As I mentioned, it's quite strengthening for the breathing muscles, and it truly creates traction. And that stretch reflex from the pressure of it, like if it was an adjustment from someone pushing into the area and you apply it on your own. You can feel that touch, that reassuring sensation of creating more space in the body with lengthening. Okay, now let's let the sand fall off. Open out through the right side of the chest. Actually, both sides get this interesting stretch. And then counter spin to your left shoulder. Turn so you're coming into hands and knees or crawl position. Placing the hands between the bolster and the blankets. You're going to spread out through the palm and let your spine weave movement, tracking that alternating rounding and arching via flexing and arching your spine. Inhaling, arch. Exhale, cat pose. Through the nose. And optional child's pose, right? You could turn the bolster and push it center of the knees. You can push it back through the legs and lean back to sit on the bolster and let your hands make a little stack for your forehead. You can also come into downward facing dog. So if you prefer palms pressing, push the floor away, lift the knees off the ground, stretch the heels back. If you're near the wall, definitely scoot the heels up the wall so that the curiosity moves towards the brainstem leaning into that length of the neck. This is a nice blend from child's pose to dog pose. Pushing the floor away, lifting up into the abdominals. Feel the abdomen expand. And on the exhale, feel it pull back towards the spine. Great. Lower your knees down. Come back if you're in child's pose. Hips back. Feel that floating lift of the hips with the bolster between the thighs. Head down. Gently lift up your tail. Hands slide out. Arch the spine. Chin forward. And then come to neutral. Scoot the bolster across the mat again. And let's take side stage with the right hip down. So we're going to pivot our weight into our right hip, right next to the bolster. And as you lean into that right hip, pull the right knee up close to the bolster. It's almost like you would when you get into pigeon pose, right? You guide the bending knee up and you extend the left leg back. I like to put a ball or a block on the inside of the thigh so my knee is tracking with my hip. Otherwise, the knee drops down and it's not in a good alignment with my hip. That's why I use it. But some people don't find it useful. Okay, so stand on the side band, stretch the left arm overhead, and settle in. For us to receive the benefit from these restorative pathways, we need to be in the shape for time. So it gives us these moments to reorganize the spaces that we breathe into. That's all it is. We use the props to hold the body in the shapes that promote circulation. It's so simple, but we make time to do this. So the left hand could be on the block. It could also be out in space. You can call this outer space. Or you could put it across onto your bolster or down your side. Head tilts to the blankets, however they support you. Have just a couple blankets. You don't want too much bulk under your neck here. Feel that equilibrium, the movement of the ribs via the breathing. Equilibrium. Now, as you slide the sand away, you're going to feel your ribs motion. Even though the pelvis is the center of gravity, what's above the pelvis can have a movement, especially in restorative pathways. You can kind of recognize all these different spaces that help you be whole. They're all important, every one of them, right? Side space, back space, inner space, front spaces are important. So when I roll to the right hip, I'm going to slide the sand to the wall. And if you don't have a wall space nearby, but you have like a chair or a couch or a bed, you can also put your legs up on that. But I want you to push your bolster next to whatever surface you're going to put your legs upside down on. And let's take our blankets, and I want you to take one of them so that it's going to be a single fold lengthwise from the bolster, which is flat, pushed into the wall, right? And I'm going to push my blanket up so it attaches to my bolster here. Make sure it's not in a funny, wacky fold. And then take my other blanket on top of that folded blanket. Bring my sitting bones to the wall. Make sure that my arm that I'm folding into is on the side of the blanket that's straight down the center of the mat, and then roll so my legs swing up the wall, back of the pelvis, beautiful arch. Blanket, slide it so it's very cozy for your neck, and then add a sandbag, if you have one, to your feet. This is the mini retreat finale, right? You get all the good things in. You get expansiveness in your breathing muscles, the front, the sides, and then we come into our finale where we completely reverse that gravitational pull back to the vital organs. So moving the blood from the extremities back into that core pool, and let the arms be comfortable, whatever that could be, on the sides, resting on your belly. Ideally, the arms are below the level of the heart because we're encouraging lowering the heart rate, blood pressure, soothing the nervous system. It's a real reboot. You feel like you got heavy boots on this one. Sandy boots. If you have an eye pillow, place it across your eyes, or just resting the eyelids down over. Feeling the facial muscles soften. Feeling that span through the ribs, abdomen, and on the exhale, it rests back into the pool, the belly pool. Breathing through the nose, opening the heart. Let gravity do its work. So in this shape, just having my legs upside down with weight on the feet helps allow gravity just to do the work to move the circulation back to the vital organs, but also any inflammation or fluid retention I have in my legs, my ankles, my knees, just from standing or puttering around. It just is a very helpful revival for the heart. It's a great vascular pose. This is Heart Healthy 101. Now, as you bend the knees, shift the feet from the wall and bend, 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 and slide the sand and place it down across the mid ribs. So the place of the sand is across the xiphoid process, so it's at the base of your sternum, right? And when we have the sand there, and we can feel competent with our breathing, bring the soles of your feet together in cobbler's pose. You can lightly push the thighs to the wall, but what I find is curious here is to just let the knees motion however they go with gravity. Just use the influence of gravity in these shapes with your props under you. Right, this could be one, if you have a lot of blocks, you could put it on top of your bolster here. If you have them both with you, right, I could put my block here and it would support my hip joint, and so make it a little bit more comfortable. Something you could consider. So just feeling where the weight is in the back of the pelvis. And then as you guide your knees back up, I want you to slide the sand off of your ribs and very slowly Roll to the side and place the hands on the ground. Push to come up. And let's take a moment just to sit. Find that calm position on your bolster with your back to the wall or centering. Bring your hands to your heart and lie for a moment with that focus internally, breathing. And exhale, bowing into that space behind your heart. Thank you for taking a little bit of time to practice in the Awake pathway. Hope that was interesting for you. I do have a self-published book called Awake and Calm, Pathways, Not Poses. So just feeling the circulation in our body from these therapeutic shapes, which is to me what restorative yoga is using props to hold my body in therapeutic shapes. They all have history, and all the teachers that have supported my learning, I have gratitude for them. Please remember to press the like button to subscribe and share with others. And I hope to see you again on the Calm Pathway. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.